Hey guys, welcome to Toomey Presents. Today I'm going to talk about the reclassification of older movies, because we're going through this trend at the moment where a lot of studios and rating boards and so on are going back looking at older movies and saying, that doesn't meet modern standards, we have to reclassify that movie because it does not hold up under the modern view, under the modern lens. And it's becoming all too often where we're hearing about studios altering content that no longer fits with their corporate identity or no longer fits with modern standards. Obviously, most people are aware that a Blu-ray of Riddick came out recently, and there was huge backlash from physical media collectors because apparently there was a slap on the butt in that movie, and they had removed that saying that doesn't fit with modern standards. But by altering the content, they didn't say this is an altered version of the movie that removes this. So when people got their shiny new 4K Blu-ray, they were met with, hey, what happened to that? You've altered the movie and not told anyone. So it is kind of misleading. Now, in the case of Mary Poppins, that is the most publicized one in terms of the change, in terms of the classification. Now, in Australia, it was a G rating. It was rated G, which was general for all audiences, all ages. And when you look at Mary Poppins, yes, there are aspects in there that may be considered problematic, but I think most people who have watched Mary Poppins before are aware what the story is of Mary Poppins and the content and so on. So most people are aware when they're picking up Mary Poppins, they know what they're getting into. But by reclassifying it to like a G or a PG rating or an M rating, it kind of says, we know better than you and we are going to limit some access for people who may have been able to previously access that movie because we feel it doesn't meet modern standards. Now, when you're looking at a movie from the 1960s like Mary Poppins, there are going to be aspects in there that are not going to hold up under the modern lens, under the modern way of society. That is the same with any movie. Gone with the Wind went through that recently because it's looking at the Civil War, and obviously there are a lot of problematic aspects to Gone with the Wind. But with Gone with the Wind, you are knowing what you're watching ahead of time. It's not like anyone's picking it up blind and saying, oh, I didn't know it was about that. Now, in the case of Gone with the Wind, I think most people are aware that movie was made in 1939. So there are going to be some outdated things in that movie. And it's also portraying the Civil War. So obviously there are things that don't hold up in modern society and ideology that may not be up to scratch in modern society. But to say Gone with the Wind can't be accessed, it is one of the movies that I believe, by adjusted for inflation, it's still one of the highest grossing movies of all time. And it's important to cinema. So yes, while the content of the movie may not say, oh, maybe it shouldn't be a PG rating, maybe put a disclaimer at the start of the movie. Maybe that's the way around it. Maybe say, hey, you know how Gone with the Wind was PG for so long? We've had to put a disclaimer in there just to say, like, the content of this movie is a product of its time. And I think that would help people. Now, another publicized movie that has been going through the reclassification stage, or people have been talking about, is Crocodile Dundee. Now, this is getting a new 4K release coming soon. And most people are aware that, hey, Crocodile Dundee, everyone's seen this movie around the world. It's one of the most quoted Australian movies ever. And we don't call them shrimps, we call them prawns. But it's highly publicized. People have watched Crocodile Dundee for years and years and years. And to change certain things now, like reclassifying it, removing certain scenes, most people are going to be aware that, hey, you've altered that movie and you're calling this the definitive or the edited cut or whatever they decide to call it. I think a lot of people are a bit annoyed by that, are a bit like, hey, why are you altering a movie that has been available to the masses for decades? It just doesn't make sense. Yes, does it hold up to modern standards? Maybe not. But as I said, I feel like it could be done in a disclaimer. Hey, this is presented in its original theatrical form, and you may be triggered by some terminology or some scenes in this movie that don't hold up to modern standards. I think a disclaimer could really help a lot of people to understand. Maybe they've picked it up blind and said, I'm going into this without looking at a trailer, I'm going into this without looking up anything. That could help a lot of people. And that could help people say, okay, maybe I don't want to watch that movie. But I think there is a certain stance where we as a society need to lay down the ground rules and say, you know what? I will not be picking up Crocodile Dundee on 4K when it comes out. Now, I've already taken that stance. I do not want the altered version of Crocodile Dundee. Now, they may very well do a 2-pack and say, nope, there will be a second disc in there on 4K, which is the unaltered cut. They may do that. But if it's 4K altered, I'm not going to buy it. I have not bought Riddick for that very same reason. Now, another movie I'm not a big fan of is Terminator 2 on 4K. Now, I am a big fan of the Terminator 2 movie, but I would prefer my Blu-ray copy. And why is that? Because the version on 4K is an altered version to fit James Cameron's look of what he wants in the movie currently. And I would say it just changes too much of the movie to be considered a definitive edition, or considered the modern version that is going to be only used going forward. I think it needs to be something of availability. Yes, you can alter the movie, you can do whatever. But like Blade Runner, I know there's Blade Runner packs out there that have every edit of the movie. Maybe that's the way to go. Have every edit, but then give people access to a newer cut that takes out problematic aspects. If they must. I'm a fan of putting a disclaimer in there and saying you're watching it as is, but I understand people don't want to see certain aspects. The same thing with Star Wars, where Lucas changed a lot of things in the original Star Wars trilogy, and especially number 4, New Hope, which wasn't called A New Hope when it came out in 1977. Lucas changed that, and people now go online and restore it themselves. That's how we get 4K 77 and despecialized. Because I believe in availability as it was intended and shown in cinemas. And to alter how a movie was seen is problematic. I believe it is something that needs to be looked at as a society. I think we are at the stage with society where cancel culture can't rule everything. Cancel culture needs to look at a movie like Mary Poppins, or look at a movie like Gone with the Wind, or even Song of the South, which is a vaulted Walt Disney movie that has not been released since the VHS days. I think society needs to look at these and say, okay, it's a problematic movie, but in saying it's a problematic movie, perhaps the way forward is that we put a disclaimer in there and we present it in a way that people are watching saying, yep, it depicts certain things in a bad light. Obviously, Gone with the Wind, it depicts very, very blunt stuff in there that shouldn't be in light in modern standards. But saying that, put a disclaimer in there. If people are aware, the audience has to be smarter and say, you know what? I know what I'm watching and I'm still making the educated choice to pick that movie. I think that's where it needs to go. Or do what Blade Runner done, where every pack is in the movie. Now, I've said in the past, I am not the fan of the cut on 4K that I have. But I'm not saying I don't like Blade Runner in general, because I have not seen every cut of that movie. So for me to sit here and say, I don't like Blade Runner, I would be hypocritical because I haven't seen every cut of Blade Runner. Another movie that I've picked up recently is Kill Bill. And I have not watched both Kill Bill movies. I think I got halfway through part 1, and then I just gave up on it because it wasn't for me at the time when I decided to watch it. Yeah, keep in mind, I watched these movies when they first came out, the first one, and I didn't like it. I watched it on VHS, I didn't like it. But with modern eyes, I might say, you know what? That is a good movie. I don't know until I watch it. But that's the thing, I need to see it in its original intended form to understand how I feel about it. And then I can say, oh, I didn't like that, or that was a problematic aspect, or, you know, whatever. But when we start going into this whole thing of altering content, where it becomes problematic is when a studio says, we don't like that movie anymore, that cut of the movie, we are going to lock that away in our vault, and you are not going to be able to access that ever again. That is what's happening with Song of the South, for example. And that's why a lot of people are going back to Laserdisc versions on wherever they get it from, and saying, you know what, this is the only way you can watch that movie, so we are not really considering it piracy, we're considering it preservation. So it's a weird way the world is working right now, and I think we need to look at it as a society and say, maybe don't edit Crocodile Dundee, maybe don't edit Mary Poppins. A disclaimer can be in there, but there needs to be a certain level of preservation. And that's where I'm going to end the video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, like, subscribe, drop a comment, and jump down in the comments, because I would really like to hear from you down there. And I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace.